Okay, so this is the upTAKE Snorkel for 3rd gen Tacomas. We got a fresh Tacoma here. We're gonna walk you through the install process. There will be some questions about ditch lights and roof racks. So depending on your roof rack and depending on your ditch light, it may fit. So we'll try to give as many views of the install as possible. On this setup, it's gonna fit with no modifications. All right, so you'll get the kit. It'll come to you like this, kind of the main body, the top portion that's up by the rack, then some miscellaneous tubes, some clamps. These guys, these two pieces here, actually just bolt on here and here. By default, they'll be black. We do offer powder coating for different colors as well, or you could paint it yourself, or you could wrap it, or you could do whatever you want. But these pieces are removable. They'll come separate. This is kind of the universal bracket that ties the top of the snorkel into the top of the vehicle. That will be the same if you're running a roof rack or if you're running no roof rack, and it will work for most roof racks as well. A couple of little brackets in here. You'll get a bag of labeled and assorted hardware, drill bits, a couple other miscellaneous tools. You get this little nibbler tool. It's basically a metal cutting tool. This is just if you don't have one. You could use a Sawzall or a jigsaw, an air saw, or a hole saw if you're comfortable. But if you don't have anything, we do ship the tool for that. Other than everything there, you're gonna want some other kind of general tools here, some silicone, a couple Allens, and a 13mm wrench, a couple little pry tools. You could use flathead screwdrivers or whatever for this if you need to, mostly to get the fender liner off and stuff like that. And then some masking tape would be good too. So our snorkels are designed around the factory intake box. This is the TRD intake box. Will be the same for that. And then any aftermarket intake that still basically goes through the fender wall here with that circle hole, if you haven't altered that, it should work with that intake as well. We're gonna remove this whole box off of here. Mine's a little tight in here because I got this ARB twin. And then all we're gonna need to do is loosen this hose clamp. And then you'll have 2 bolts down here, 12 mils. All right, so 2 bolts on the inside, 1 more 12mm on this outside bracket. Ours was kind of hard to get to because of this air tank. Yours will be pretty easy to get to. You just have to loosen a little bit and then it'll actually slide out this way. And then this is where your plumbing is gonna come in from inside the fender. All right, so this part's probably the biggest pain of the whole install, honestly, is removing the inner fender liner. We have it down to as far as you really need to go, because basically we're just trying to access up in here. So this is gonna be a series of some, depending on bumper, how much you've cut out and stuff, potentially some 10mm bolts, and then a bunch of these little clips that are basically, they press in here. They're a bit of a pain. Some of them you can access from inside of the engine bay and kind of push the clips together. Others, you kind of just use a series of pry tools and try to depress that and pull it out. Hopefully you don't break them. If you do, you can get replacements of them. And then some, there's a couple clips on this one anyway that were these push style. I honestly don't know if I put these in myself after I broke these or not, but you may have some push styles which you just pop the top out of. But the goal we're getting to is basically allowing us to access this area here. So my intake doesn't have it. There's kind of a shoehorn type piece that you'll need to remove. You can see the full install video for that if you want. But what we will need to do is basically there's these tabs here and here. We want to cut this center one to the length of these. You can use a utility knife, a little Dremel or whatever. We're gonna do it with just this little set of nippers here. And that's just to allow our fitting to go all the way in and rest on that. So once you've trimmed that, you'll have this reducer, and that the thicker part of the reducer slides over. Now, it's not easy. It's a very, very, very tight fit. So you'll need to kind of get it in there and then kind of push in and work the edge over, but you'll be able to get it on. Should fit. Maybe you could try some lube, might make it a little easier. Then you'll get the bigger of the 4. These are all 3 the same size. This one's bigger, of the banjo clips, essentially hose clamps. And you'll loosen it up, slide it over the top, and then just tighten that up. All right, so you'll probably have this piece in here. You just pull that out, and then we'll slide this right in its place, right back into its normal location here. And then put those 3 bolts back in. All right. So then we'll just get our filter back in and put the top back on. Then you'll connect the body to the head. It'll have some threaded inserts like this. You'll have a bag that says connect head to body. 2 bolts, regular washer, lock washer, bolt on both sides. All right, so then we'll install a plus nut underneath to hold the plumbing in place. Bolt, washer, 10 mil open socket, another washer, and then the actual plus nut. So you just tighten this down on to the wrench. We'll put it in the hole, and then we'll use a socket to tighten it. Tightening it will basically suck this down and expand that to kind of seal itself in the hole and essentially give you a nut to put the bolt into. So that's gonna go right in. Here's where the intake comes out. There's 2, kind of a slotted hole and a round hole. This will just go right into the round hole. So back of the plus nut will go in right here. Plus nuts are notorious for slipping sometimes. If it does slip and you've messed up the install a bit, technically you could get to it by taking the intake back off, or you could reach kind of like a needle nose plier in there and hold the side that's spinning and then tighten it down. All right, then we'll assemble what goes inside of the fender here. These elbows are the same. So you get the little piece goes in here, onto here, and then onto here. How that works inside is basically this is connecting to your intake and this is connecting to the snorkel, but obviously that's all inside of here. All right, so you got your snorkel head attached to the body here. This is gonna mount up here. This will clearance on most roof racks out there. It definitely will clearance all of upTOP's racks as well. This is your standard bracket. This, I'll set this aside. This bracket is designed to go into these factory threaded inserts on a 3rd gen Tacoma. If you have no roof rack, you use this bracket. If you have an Alpha or a Bravo or a Zulu, you use this bracket. We include the hardware to attach it if you don't have a roof rack. If you do have a roof rack, you're gonna wanna take that out. You're gonna wanna re-silicone those bolts, make sure, and then you're gonna wanna use the same bolts to attach this bracket on. If you have a Kilo, we will ship you this bracket that we have attached here. The Kilo you can't really mess it up. You take this bolt off, we ship you a slightly longer bolt. The slightly longer bolt goes in this little bend over here, keeps this bracket from going left and right, and that is the attachment for a Kilo. If you have any other brand's roof rack, this bracket may work. You may need to modify the roof rack a little bit, or you could DIY your own bracket if you'd like to, but essentially the end result is this top threaded portion on the head is supported with this bracket. We like that because nothing actually touches here. You don't need to drill, you don't need to do any plus nuts in here. This is off just a little bit, so there's no rubbing or anything here. You could actually even clean a little bit underneath. So then with the regular bracket or the kilo bracket, we kind of have this X out of here. This X basically allows you to fine tune the fitment of the snorkel. Every rack and every Tacoma will line up just a little bit different. So we basically have some adjustment built both into the normal bracket as well as the kilo bracket. So we'll come in here, we have the bolt, the fender washer, and the lock washer. That'll thread into the insert here. And you can see with this X, we have a little bit of adjustability. For our setup, we've found that all the way over gives us the fitment that we want. Now the fitment we want, this is contoured exactly to the fender flare here. So it'll lock in at a certain place. If it's too far, it won't feel right. If it's too high, it won't feel right. It'll lock in right there. So if you want to play with this fitment a little bit, you can see adjusting this adjusts where it is here. So all the way over, that is the best fitment for us. So then, once it's on here, you don't really need all of this masking tape. It's actually, we have a gasket behind that's a padded gasket. It's not gonna scratch your paint or anything. Obviously, we're about to drill a bunch of holes into the fender anyway. This is more so, we got a black truck, we got a black marker. It's just so you can see what we're doing here. Now this marker right here is kind of specifically designed for this application, but you could kind of use any marker or pencil or whatever as long as you can get through these holes. So first, once this is in its spot, it locks in only really one spot. You're gonna wanna trace around this big hole. There are 3 little holes in here. That's where we're gonna do through bolts through the fender. So we'll mark them. And just be cognizant of the marking angle here. So the way the pen is, you're marking the hole just a little bit on the outside of center. So once you got all of that marked up, it doesn't hurt. So we drew also the outline here, so you can just make sure it's locked in at the perfect fitment, but that's not really required. Now, this will kind of hold itself on here a little bit, but we're gonna start drilling and everything. So now we're just gonna remove this bolt that we just hand tightened, get the snorkel off of here. Now, we made X's already here. These are our drill points. Again, a little bit inside of those dots. These are all gonna be through bolts. Then this is the original circle. That was the cutout for this. We're gonna need to jam some plumbing through. So the circle we traced, we really need to add about 1/4 to 1/2 inch more outside. Now this is where you're gonna drill a hole and then start the little nibbler tool. It's time intensive. We just include it in case you don't have any other means. You don't have a jigsaw or an air saw or whatever. This is obviously a circle, as you can tell. We're not gonna tell you to use a hole saw because you could get in trouble with a hole saw. This is not a flat surface. This is not wood. This is metal. Your hole saw, depending on what kind of hole saw it is, and if you don't know how to use a hole saw, it could catch, it could jerk you, it could cut you, it could damage your paint. So we're telling you, don't use a hole saw. At the same time, this is a circular hole that you're making. If you are comfortable with using a hole saw and you know its implications in metal, we're not telling you to do it, but we don't know what you do. All right, we include this drill bit here. It has a depth setting tool on it, so a little Allen head here. You'll slide this up. This is just to get through the sheet metal. So you basically set this, about 1/2 inch is fine. All right, we call this the fender destroyer. This is the point of no return here. So that's what the depth set, just so you're not punching way through. So to start regardless of what kind of saw you're using or if you're gonna use the nibbler, you can use the same drill bit to start your hole. And I'll usually just do 2, so I have 2 points. If you want to see the nibbler tool that we send you in action, I'm not going to do it. Micah did that in the full video, so you can watch him work away at that. Air saws are great. You can use a jigsaw. You could use a Sawzall maybe, but air saw is probably the preference. All right, so once you've completely destroyed your fender, if you have tape, you can peel it off at this point. We're gonna wanna clean up these holes a little bit. So this is just exposed metal now. So you're gonna wanna use a little bit of paint, a little bit of fingernail polish, something essentially to protect these edges from rusting. So if you have a deburring tool, or if you wanna get a little sandpaper or whatever and clean up the edges, they will probably be a little bit sharp, so be careful so you don't cut yourself. But yeah, just prep those so they don't rust. All right, so once you've destroyed your fender, now we put this back on. All right, if all goes to plan, you'll get bag D and get your bolt with your washer. I already got 2 of them in here. And basically just feed them through the holes. If your holes don't line up perfectly, you could make them just a little bit bigger, but hopefully you did it perfect on the first time. On the back side of these bolts will be your nylock nuts. Through here you can see there will be a little foam piece on that side, and you can just pull it down and out of the way to access your last bolt up there. Cool, so those 13 millimeter on the back, Allen, I forget what size in the front, a little bit weird to get to, but once it's on, it is solid. Then actually, this is kind of hand tight. You can kind of adjust this to what you want. If you want a little more room here to clean underneath, you can. If you want it back a little further, you can, or just wherever it wants to sit naturally, you can just tighten it down at that point. So we assembled this earlier. You're gonna basically, this is gonna go in pretty much parallel. This is gonna come up at a little bit of an angle. So we don't have all of these tightened down yet. So just make sure you can access all of the nuts on the clamps from the bottom, because that's what we're gonna do now. You may want to lube it up a little bit with your favorite lube to allow easier insertion. Okay, so once we're in here, there's kind of a single hose clamp that can merge these two together because it'll fully compress here. This one can be tightened onto this, and then this one up here is tightened as well. So then you'll get this little bracket, and then bag F inner fender mount. That is gonna have your bolt, lock washer, regular washer. Orientation is like this with the numbers. And then this spacer. That'll go up into your plus nut that you installed earlier. And then this part, you'll line up this bracket to mount onto that. Once the bolt's on here, that goes into the plus nut. This is basically an extra nut that you add on to there. And you don't even, well, I'm not gonna say you don't need it. Put it on, we give it to you, but it's pretty rigid in there without it, but this keeps it fully tucked up, not gonna move it all on you. All right, you're gonna wanna add a little bit of silicone in here. Again, it's pretty pressure fit in here, not gonna leak or anything, but one little extra step goes a long way. All right, so there's 3 pieces here, one with a sticker. It's really a rubber gasket with an adhesive back. Line that up nicely. This is really what is air sealing and water sealing that hole there. So that'll go on, and then this is more of an aesthetic cap that goes on. You'll get bag C with the logo plate attaching hardware. That goes on there. This is the piece that you can order in different color powder coats if you want a little bit of style points up in there. Actually, this piece is what I should wrap in multicam black, and then it would just clamp it on there. Yeah, could do that. Anywho, then you just put these bolts on there. Then the bird cage intake grill goes right up there. Same deal, just doesn't seal obviously because this is where all of your air goes in now. Then you'll basically reassemble all of this just like you took it out. I don't know if I mentioned it earlier, you don't technically need to remove your wheel and tire, though it does make access up in here a little bit easier. And then that concludes today's presentation of upTOP upTAKE Snorkel install on a 3rd Gen Tacoma. If you have any questions, ask them down below. I will try my best to answer them. These we just priced a little bit lower now on the website, so available and shipping right now at uptopoverland.com.